Testing.
Oh, so it's now on. Okay, now we can begin. Luigi, you did good work over there. Okay. So we're all ready to start now? Okay, good afternoon. We're going to begin the Budget Committee meeting for the month of June. We expect this is the last Budget Committee meeting of the fiscal year, although this is pretty early in the month for that. And so, I'm sorry? Right, exactly. So we're going to begin our agenda, and our first items on the agenda are three from the Department of Public Works. They are continue in force for three capital items. And so we have visiting with us today our Commissioner, Amy Siebert, and Deputy Jim Michael, and Mr. Romano, our head of building construction and maintenance. So we have three. PW1 is continue in force for the Glenville Center.
Yes, so this account basically is an account that you guys provided for matching funds, and we're still waiting for coordination. We went out to bid for the project. Bids came back fairly high, so now we're going back out to bid. We're looking at obtaining additional grant funding from the state. So we're trying to proceed forward with the project, but until we get all those pieces forward, we haven't spent any of this funding yet. So there's also a condition on this with getting funding from the neighborhood group. So they're still committed to doing that. It's just a matter of when we get the project moving further forward, so.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Leslie?
I just have one question, and you may not know the answer at this point, but I looked at the condition that's on this particular appropriation, and it talks a little bit about the structure of the funding. Is all of that subject to discussion again because of the new state funding source or the other funding sources you have? Or are you still planning, it said 250,000 from the community comes first, then up to 150 for the town. The total number is 500, so there's still 100,000 left in play, but is that still the model that you're moving forward with?
That's still the model we're moving forward with this portion of it, yes.
Thank you.
Nisha, do you have any questions? Okay. So, should we take these individually? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the continue in force for the Glenville Center project for 500,000.
I'll second.
Moved by Ms. Moriarty, second by Ms. Aurora. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I should have asked a question. You mean as a routine item or non-routine?
Yes, that's routine.
So, and everyone's okay with their vote as a routine item? Nisha?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes unanimously, 400, as a routine item. Okay, our second item is PW2, Public Works, continue in force, the Hamel Rink improvements.
Yes, this is another continue in force so that we can continue to finalize and get our preliminary site plan started and through planning and zoning. And then this funding would be, it's conditioned upon the MI and approval of that. So once that's done, we'll release that condition and need the funds at that point. So, but this has been delayed, so hence the continue in force.
So I think we're all looking forward to it moving forward. Any questions, Leslie?
No questions? I'll make the motion.
Nisha, you have any questions?
No
Okay.
questions. Go ahead.
I'll make the motion to approve the continuation in force for the Hamel Rink Improvements Project for $50,000 as a routine item.
I'll second.
Those in favor? Okay, so that passes 400 unanimously as a routine item. And we have a third one from the Public Works Department. Again, this is continue in force Greenwich Point, and this is the Chimes Building project.
That's correct.
So is this Luigi again?
That's me. So this is the continuing force for the Chimes building. These funds were allocated for septic and electric improvements associated with the town's portion of the rehab of that facility. Greenwich Point Conservancy is working on some documentation and additional survey information. They've been actively working on the survey and getting us that information so we can move along to the next steps. And that would entail the release of conditions. So funds are still conditioned on that. They're working on it, and then look forward to bringing that to your attention for the release of conditions coming up this year, hence the continuing force.
Is there any questions? Leslie?
No questions?
Laura? Anisha?
I'll make a motion to approve the continuing in force for the Greenwich Point Chimes Building project for $325,000.
I'll second.
Routine.
That's routine, okay. And you're fine?
I agree.
Okay, those in favor? 400, that passes unanimously. And again, routine, so there's likely, I'm looking at our chair, likely no need for anyone to come to the full BET meeting, which is tomorrow at 6:30.
All right, well,
I know.
thank you for
First
letting
time
us off the
is-
hook.
First time I ever remember a back-to-back meeting with the full BET, but anyway, so you shouldn't, anyway.
All right, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Luigi, you need to change your telephone thing, because,
I just found that out again yesterday.
yeah, because I tried two different places in the phone book. But in the current phone book, it goes to someone else's name. I actually, yeah, exactly. Both of them, so you don't know whether to leave a message for you or not.
Oh, yeah, that's my spirit.
Yeah. Okay, so we're quickly moving on now to GEMS, our Greenwich Emergency Services Friends. And for this is release of conditions for a contribution to GEMS. And this is the first year after years that we're releasing this as one and not twice a year, right? So this is great to see you all. And so we have Tracy Sheetinger, our Executive Director. Are you going to begin, or is, yeah?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll
Oh, well, I don't
begin.
know, however you're going to do
I'm
it.
also here with Tom Miserandino, our Director of Finance as well. So thank
Okay.
you, and thank you for that, us only having to come once, although, you know, it's always nice to see you guys. But I guess
You
I'll
never
give
can tell, you might have to come during the budget season, too.
That's okay. We're fine with that. I'll just give you a quick operational update. So if you recall, in December, we spoke about our call volume returning to pre-pandemic level. We just completed our fiscal year, April 30th. We ended that fiscal year with 60 incidents, which is 500 more than last year, and we transported 4,235. So for those of you who have been involved with GEMS for the past almost 37 years, 4,200 transports has been pretty consistent prior to COVID for at least 10 years. And we're clearly back to that. Nothing outstanding that I can share with you that is, oh, these calls are what we're doing more. It's evenly spread out across the board, whether it's a medical call, a trauma call, motor vehicle accident, things of that nature. So our statistics for the year, our cardiac arrest witness save rate is 50% against the national average of 27%. So we do really attribute that to public access AEDs, and training so many people in this town that are willing to actually do CPR, because those people are, by doing CPR on someone, for GEMS to get there and the paramedics to initiate the advanced life support care that's necessary. Childbirth, we had 2 this year. That is not typical, so I figured I would report that. We did 20 continuous pressure airway monitoring, that's called CPAP, and 17 Narcan administrations. So keep in mind that's 17 Narcan administrations for an entire year in this town. by GEMS. So some people find that to be a low number, not a terribly high number, which I think is a good thing. We don't really need to talk about our other revenue services, although we are having a kids triathlon coming up. We just had our gala for fundraising and a small friend type of community event called the Cascaber. So we did really well with fundraising, but I'll leave that to Tom. I won't take all your fun. We're still running EMT classes that fill every single time. A CPR class will be running tomorrow, a babysitting course this weekend, so we try to continue to remain extremely involved in the town. So speaking of our public access AED project, again, this is something new that we've been working on the past few years. First ones were down at Todd's Point. We now have 17 around town. All of those have been installed through our fundraising dollars. We maintain them, and they're just out at many of the parks, Coscob Park, Byram Park, Binney Park, Western Civic Center, we'll plan Eastern, the high school. We're waiting on one to be installed at Greenwich Library. So where we see fit and people are willing to continue to help us fundraise for them, we will continue to put them in because they will truly save someone's life. One already did down at the Point 2 years ago.
Tracy, how much do they cost?
So the AED itself is $2,500. There's a case and a stand, and the case connects through cellular, so it can call 911. It takes a picture, it'll talk to you. That's roughly $1,600. Don't hold me to that, I don't know that number off the top of my head. But all in, about $4,000, $4,500, give or take.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then one of the things that we'll be doing this current fiscal year that we're going into is something called data collection. The Center for Medicare Services at the federal level is requiring all ground ambulance services to report on data. And the goal is to try and obtain as much information as they can to see if they can adjust Medicare rates, because EMS has been complaining for several years and fighting at the federal level to try and get our reimbursements a little bit higher. Remember, state regulates what we can bill, and then there's Medicare allowances, which $488 versus roughly $1,200. One medication could simply cost $600. That's just one medication that we might give to somebody. So we've been working really hard to try and get these rates back up. So for this entire year, we will be collecting data and submitting that we're required to the federal government.
Sorry, Tracy, I just want to clarify. So are you saying that we get reimbursed at a rate of $488 for a call that costs us $1,200? Is that just so I'm clear?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's the contractual allowance. Medicare is a little bit less, Medicaid, excuse me. I believe that number is $317. No, that might have gone up,
It's higher.
356 now?
Quick question on this. Just a quick question on that. When you say data information being shared, what, are you just sharing the data of the actual call, or are you sharing information about the individual and?
No, there's no patient information. It's pretty much everything from the type of calls that we're doing, whether it's advanced life support or basic life support, how many calls we're doing, how many people respond on these calls, what are those costs, what are the costs of the fuel, what,
Yep. Okay, just wanted to know.
Yep.
Patient information was protected.
no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
A lot of financial information.
Yeah.
So I have another question just around that same thing. When you do these calls, on your chart called type of call, you list assist, canceled, refused care, and so forth.
Correct.
Can you just please remind, I remember, that you indicated that some of these calls you don't get reimbursed for.
That's
Can you
correct.
just run through this list and advise us where you get reimbursed? So that's even worse than using these $300 or $400 reimbursement numbers, because you get nothing when you go out. So could you
Yes,
just,
so let me just make sure we're all on the same page. So we do not get reimbursed for assists. We do not get reimbursed for canceled calls. We do not get reimbursed for refusal of care, I would say 99% of the time. The state of Connecticut last June put parameters on certain calls, if this, then that. And then we can bill for $100 or $200. Again, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I can get it for you if you needed it. We do not bill for somebody who has passed away and we do not transport, so that's the DOA. Patient not found, treated, transferred care, no bill. The only things we bill for are transports. So where I said roughly 6,500 incidents, we only were able to bill for approximately 4,200 of those calls. So there's a lot of what we call in the industry time on task that's required of us to be at the ready and to respond. And
So based on some of the data that you gave here, about 25% of your calls you don't get any reimbursement for? Is that?
Correct.
that's correct.
The only time we get paid is when we transport to the hospital, essentially.
Thank you. Oh, we didn't mean to interrupt you.
Nope.
We want you to continue, but just, answering the questions.
That was.
These are of interest,
That's absolutely fine. No, that was my last bullet point, was just discussing the required data collection. We're not the only ambulance service. Every ambulance service across the nation is doing this reporting. It's apparently going to be extremely labor-intensive for us this year, but hopefully, looking forward into the future of reimbursement in healthcare, that this will help, so.
Thank you. Do you have any other financial information, or I don't know what you're prepared to
Sure.
discuss.
Yep.
Is there
I
anything
could-
anyone else wants to know, either?
No, Tom can do a full financial
Doesn't have to be
review.
full, just like a couple
You wanna
synopsis
highlight?
things.
So-
Very light version.
As Tracy mentioned, our fiscal year ended April 30th, so we had a very good year, as evidenced by our increased transports. So our year-to-date change in net operating assets was $413,000. This is about 120 lower than prior year-to-date. On the revenue side, we were 7% ahead of budget and 5% higher than prior year-to-date, and that's all entirely driven by this higher call volume. On the expense side, we were 1.8% over budget. That's 137,000. And I could attribute that to basically two line items. So if you look at our expenses, you'll see a lot of ins and outs. But the two big things that drove that are, one, were the costs for the emergency management director, which came subsequent to our budgeting for the year. So that was an unbudgeted expense. And then the other line item was fundraising expenses, which were, our gala, which is usually at the end of March, beginning of April. We were over in expenses, which we kind of expected to be, but we've been, the payoff for it is the higher revenue we've gotten, which we had another very successful gala this year.
So congratulations, that's
Thank you.
great news.
Thank you.
We have any questions? No? No questions? Laura?
It's not really a financial question, but I read that you recently received a gift of some e-bikes. And I just wondered, how does that work with your staffing model? Obviously, they wouldn't be used for transport, so you wouldn't be billing for that, but yet I'm sure it's a proactive approach to providing care. So can you just maybe
Certainly, that's
briefly
something that.
talk about your strategy with those?
Absolutely. The bike team has been placed down at Todd's Point since I've been here in 2006, and they're there all summer long, from the time the students get out of school, so the weekend after graduation, so I think that's next week, to be quite honest. Every Saturday and Sunday, barring rain through Labor Day, we send the bike team down there. And this has been done prior to even me, because we want to initiate medical care prior to the ambulance getting there. We get kind of bogged down in OG center in the summertime, so we don't want to delay any care. So these bikes are replacing our pedal bikes. Thankfully, somebody helped us secure these funds because he felt that us pedaling around 75 pounds worth of equipment and heart monitors by the time we got there, we might need the oxygen. And so thankfully, he helped us secure that money, and Greenwich Toyota donated the funds. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I know that it's always a challenge every year to get lifeguards fully staffed and whatnot, and it's obviously a beehive of activity, so I think that's a great improvement. And just a question, I should know this, but I don't. Is there an AED in Town Hall?
There's, yes, there's 3, one on every floor.
Okay.
And we just checked them.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Nisha?
Where does your fundraising revenue flow in?
So it's not part of, so you see, yeah, it's not on there at all. So if you recall, so our fundraising funds capital expenditures. What we present to you here is the operating side of the business, right?
Can you give me a sense of kind of what fundraising looks like for?
So in fiscal '23, we had a gross revenue of about $1 million, $1,100,003, I think the number was. Of that, about 280 of it was from the gala, which was the biggest contributor to it.
That's
So
net or that's gross?
that's gross, gross.
Roughly you net about more than $500,000.
Yes, yes, exactly. And then what that goes in to fund our following fiscal year's capital budget, basically, is kind of how we operate. Sure.
And sorry, just as a reminder, an ambulance costs about $1 million, is that correct?
Not
Not
about
quite?
$1 million now.
Probably 300,000.
Oh, I was way off, okay.
Well, that's just the vehicle. That's not the equipment inside. Ever since COVID, everything has gone up tremendously. We ordered a vehicle, 2 vehicles, 12 months ago. And Tom just told me when we walked in here, we might not see those 2 ambulances for another 12 months.
Right.
So I don't know what the base vehicle cost will be 12 months from now. But I can tell you that a $35,000 heart monitor that every paramedic has is now $48,000. So inflation, COVID, roughly, I'd say $500,000 would be an educated guess on what it costs to
Fully equipped.
fully equip an ambulance,
So including the cost of the vehicle or in addition?
including
Okay,
the
all right,
cost of
thank
the
you.
vehicle. Yep.
Thank you. So do I have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to release the conditions on the $4,782,305 dollar contribution to GEMS.
I'll second.
Okay, those in favor? So I don't know whether, this is not exactly routine because release of conditions do need to be approved by the BED?
Actually, I would propose that it's be routine.
You do propose it,
Yes.
okay.
There are no issues that were identified in their operations of it that would cause concern or, so
Did your seconder agree with that?
I'm okay with that, yes.
And those who voted? They're fine, okay. So this will be routine. And it will be on tomorrow evening's agenda. Again, it's very unusual to have back-to-back meetings for the BED.
Thank you.
No, I think we make copies. We're in good shape. Thank you very much. Or maybe there's someone in the audience that wants one. Okay, so we're going to move on. Caroline Baisley. So welcome, Caroline, in your beautiful spring colors.
Hi, good afternoon. This
Good.
is Matt Enginato. He's the department's new business office manager.
Oh,
So
welcome,
at this
Matt.
time, we have all staff, full-time staff. They're all the positions are filled at this point. And I only have one position that needs to be interviewed for a grant position. But then again, I don't know what I'm going to do with all these people.
That's great.
Oh, I have such
And
good
we don't want
ideas.
we don't want any more COVID pandemics or anything like that, so,
Well, this grant is over 1 year
I saw
old.
that.
In fact, this was a 2.5-year grant, and because of the backlog up at the state capitol and the health department and the AG's office, this contract was written 1 year later for 3/01/2023 through 2/29/2024. Its original date was March 1st of 2022. So it's long awaited. And of course, as you know, the president has ended the public health emergency in terms of money. We still have COVID, thankfully, very low number of cases. But the money had to be distributed, and it wouldn't look so good if they put a year ago date on there. So they decided to change it, which creates a little problem for us because of the amount of money that we have. But anything that does not get spent will most likely go back to the federal government on this one. Okay, so this grant is, again, the last of the COVID-19 grant. It's called ELC2, and it's in the amount of $289,000, 088.67. The temporary salaries is for what will be, if needed, will be for a contact tracer. And again, this grant was changed a little bit, knowing that the end of the pandemic was approaching and knowing that the COVID-19 cases are low. It's anticipation that any kind of public health significance of disease or infectious diseases, this would obviously still be able to be used. So the contact tracer is for COVID-19, but it also has language in the total contract that says that surveillance and investigation would be done for any public health significance incident. So that there would be $28,297.50 for the contact tracer, and of course, then the Social Security, the benefits go along with that. So a total of $30,462.26 is appropriated for that. This particular person will be is paid through the payroll in the 130 account in this particular grant. The second one is professional services, has 3 items. The first item is a Medicare provider to conduct COVID-19 and other related infectious disease evaluation and vaccinations. This is done by a short contract with the department, subcontractor with the department to provide that. Again, it could be used for vaccination of any kind of a booster. There will be a new booster coming our way in the fall. The bivalent booster is still available in small supply that folks over 65 years of age does have availability for that. And then as we get into the fall, there'll be another bivalent, a different kind of combination of COVID-19 because there are different various viruses of COVID-19 circulating in the United States and in the globe. So that particular variant in the fall will be a combination of that one. Also, we're taking a very serious look and watch on any kind of movement with a potential pathogen that has to do with flu.
I'm sorry, that has to do with what?
Flu. Influenza.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
The second part, which is $141,456.16. This is will be a subcontract. Again, I work with the purchasing department to design this one and the one that's next to develop a contract to provide services, but this is with Southwestern Area Health Education Center, AHAC, to provide 2 communal health educators and workers in the community. And this you may be familiar with. This is one of the items that was put towards or was put forward by the health department in the AARP grant. The state of Connecticut did think that this was a very favorable item. At this point in time, it will be reduced, I would imagine. I don't think that there's enough time to really get the best benefit out of this particular item until next February. But we're going to do our best to get them on board. And they're already trained. AAC has done training for, and has put together a very large contract with the governor's office. As you recall, very early on in the pandemic, there were a lot of these workers, these health workers out in the community, working with populations that may have feared to get vaccinated for one thing or another. So really, there's a lot of health education that goes with this particular
Can I ask a
item.
question? Is there coordination, or should there be coordination with the Department of Human Services? Because this very much is helping people find resources, right, for what they do.
We talked about that. My ARP item was a joint program with that particular funding item was with Human Services. This one has a more of a public health twist, but certainly that population, some of the populations that she deals with would obviously be very beneficial for public health. So I coordinate with her, absolutely.
Because you may be able to spend more of the funds
Yeah.
if they've already identified the
Absolutely.
population, et cetera.
Yes. Yes, we work well, very well together. The third item is a nursing consultant. This particular individual is the public health educator in the ELC1 grant, which you're familiar with. That was our first COVID-19 or second COVID-19 grant. This is a second part of the grant. We had to take the nursing consultant out of the 130 or out of the payroll program. I say 130 as if you know what I'm talking about, but to actually get paid through the town's payroll system. I had to take this person out, and I have to develop a contract because this particular individual is a retiree. And so we're confronted with restricted hours that this particular person can work. So right now she's now working towards the end of the ELC1 contract, which I still have. And when we put her in the ELC2 contract, it will be a contract as a consultant. So she'll be able to do a lot more hours, get a lot more done for us on this front. She's doing right now, she's planning on doing a lot of revising of our plans, which we obviously need. We were kind of backlogged with the COVID-19 pandemic. We didn't really get to do a lot of our revisions or our plans, so she'd be working on that. And I'll work with purchasing also to develop a very specific contract, which has to do with the deliverables of this particular grant that she has to, she has to deliver on. And then the last one for $10,000, 032.31, is overtime services for the staff. We are fortunate to have our overtime of our staff being paid for by the COVID-19 grants all along, and this is the last of the COVID-19 grants, but this will apply also to our flu clinics and any kind of clinic that we have to put forward for whatever kind of public health issue is before us at the time. It's hard to talk about what will be in the future because you just don't know these days. Everything is circulating. Emerging diseases are coming back and so on and so forth. So that's really in a nutshell for the grant itself. We'll do the best we can.
Great, Caroline. Not sure after all those details whether we'll have questions. Do you have any, Laura? Leslie, no? Nisha, no? So this is great. So do I have any motions?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the use of the ELC COVID grant for $289,088.67 and to have this be routine.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Those in favor? So that.
Thank you.
That passes 400 unanimously as routine. So I expect that that will be routine tomorrow afternoon, too. Yeah. So you won't need to reappear. Thank you very much. Thank you. Great presentation, thank you. So now we're going to have a visit from our law department, and this is a bit different. This is about the operating part of the department rather than the caseload. And so we have our town attorney, Barbara Schellenberg, here to describe a requested appropriation for $275,000. Microphone, please.
Yeah, at this point in time, there are two main reasons for the requested appropriation. The first is during this fiscal year, having trouble hearing me?
No.
Okay. During this fiscal year, two attorneys retired, longtime assistant attorneys, and one before she was retired was out on an extended leave for several months, and that required outside counsel to be hired to handle litigation matters that could not be given to other staff members who were already working very, very hard. So we were quite severely understaffed for a period of time in the law department. And in addition to that, the town's independent investigation of the Greenwich Public Schools, that is coming out of the law department budget as well. We did additionally have some unexpected expenses with the Cordic case. However, at this point, that trial has been continued until August 22nd, so that there won't be significant additional expenses in the month of June for that case.
So Barbara, I'm just going to, it's my understanding that this is going through the RTM simultaneously for next Monday's meeting. However, that
Correct.
requested amount was larger because you didn't have that full information, but now you've been able to refine this down to the requested
Right. so I-
$275,000.
Right. I had to get the submission in for the RTM call on May 19th, and I didn't have as updated information at that point in time, so I originally put in for a $375,000 additional appropriation request, but I told both the Finance Committee and the L&R Committee last night that my request had changed to $275,000, and Alexis told me I can simply state that on the floor on Monday night for the RTM. As a matter of fact, the L&R Committee decided to amend the resolution for the $275,000, knowing that that's what I was going to request.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Leslie?
The amount that you had to use additional outside attorney fees because of some retirements and leave in retirement, does that include offsets for reduced salary amounts during the year?
Well, not really, because what happened is that Fred Durango agreed to stay a couple of extra months, and we definitely needed the help, but he asked that he not have to work on any matter that was coming up for trial. So we agreed to send that out. And then Valerie Mays Keeney was on an extended leave, and she was getting paid her full pay during that period of time. After being out for, I think it was 4.5, 5 months, she came back, and I wanted to turn that litigation back over to her, but shortly thereafter, she told me she was retiring. So I couldn't do that. But again, she was receiving her full pay, so she worked on other assignments, but not litigation matters.
So is that indicative that the law department budget, like for fiscal '24, is too low? And now I sort of understand that certain cases will change sort of the amount of the funding, and it may vary from year to year to some degree. But if you have two attorneys that were working on cases, and then you still had a need for outside counsel. I'm
Well,
just
they
wondering
weren't.
structurally.
So again, that was the problem. they weren't working on the cases. I had to take the litigation and give it to outside counsel.
But they were doing,
because-
well, at least one was doing other work that would have otherwise
For a
still
couple
need
of
to be
months,
done.
but she was out for about 5 months on an extended leave. So, for example, she was handling one major litigation matter, the Moran case, that was very active. And that was a case that had to be sent out, and outside counsel had to prepare the summary judgment motion and memorandum and argue it, and that was a major undertaking. I don't expect that to be the situation for this coming fiscal year because Laura McGeechee came on board in December, and that's been a huge plus. So far, she's been working out tremendously, and we're in the process now of interviewing. We're right in the midst of interviewing. We've interviewed 5 candidates. We're bringing back 3 this week, actually, for second interviews. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to bring someone else on board, probably either right at the end of this fiscal year or the beginning of next fiscal year. So again, there are unforeseen circumstances, but I anticipate that we'll be in good shape in terms of having staff to handle a lot of the litigation, and certainly new litigation that's coming in.
Thank you.
So 2 questions. The first is just to clarify, you're filling the 2 positions, the Valerie's position as well as the additional retirement.
Laura McGeechee filled Fred Durango's spot.
Okay, I
So
thought there was another retirement. No?
Valerie, right. So both of those happened during this past fiscal year. Fred retired at the end of October. Valerie retired as of April 1.
Okay.
So Laura McGeechee was hired to fill Fred's position, and we're now hoping very soon to fill Valerie's position.
Okay. And then the second question, the law committee took this up, I presume?
Yes,
And can you tell us the vote?
yes, it was unanimous from the Law Committee.
Thank you.
And also passed it at both RTM committees last night.
Thank you. Any other questions? No?
I'll make a motion. A motion to approve an additional appropriation for the Law Department of $275,000. And I'm going to propose that this be routine, given the explanation that we have in the packet and that 9 members of the BET have already heard and participated in a discussion about it.
I'll second.
Moved by Ms. Moriarty, second by Ms. Aurora. As a routine item, those in favor? Okay, that has passed unanimously and as routine, so.
Thank you very
there's the
much.
Good news. And then I think we're going to see you return a little later on the agenda. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you very much. So now we have an old friend coming for a release of conditions on his tag budget.
Hi, everybody.
So Mike, what kind of good news do we have today?
We have some very good news. We, as we had discussed about 6 months ago, we are in the midst of growing tag, which is certainly much more enjoyable than shrinking tag. And what is driving that tremendous growth is predominantly a contract that we have with the state through their regional transit district, Norwalk Transit District. We expected this year that we would grow to 5 vehicles, 5 drivers serving that contract. We are already up to 6, with the possibility of a 7th in the wings. Over the length of this contract, which was a 5-year contract, expected $3 million plus revenues over the life of the contract. We are accelerating based on the needs within the community. People are coming out, requiring additional rides beyond the baseline projections that the RFP had. And when we were bidding for this, there was an expectation that there likely would be higher transportation rates than were in the contract. So we're not surprised, but everything was done at a very conservative level. So now we're experiencing that additional growth over and above what the plan had expected. With that, we've brought on new vehicles, brought on new drivers, and to manage a growth like this in a very short period of time, one of the biggest challenges is to make sure you don't lose sight of your costs in the process. It's something where if you allow unconstrained growth, the cost can get away from you, and you can lose your ability, an organization can lose their ability to maintain their break-even status in our case, and in other cases, a for-profit profit status. So it has been our wonderful challenge to try and manage that growth appropriately. And through all of the areas where we had the ability to control costs and usage and whatever, we've done a very strong job and successful job at managing the costs related to the growth. One area that has been particularly challenging is an area that we could not control the costs, and that is the acquisition of the vehicles that we need to service this contract. When we were bidding on the contract in the spring of 2022, we assumed that the vehicles that we were going to purchase, which at the time, pre-COVID, were about $60,000 to $65,000 each, probably closer to 60 at that point. We assumed there would be some price increase due to inflation. And of course, at that point, inflation was still relatively low. And I say that from the standpoint of prime rates and borrowing rates, because for us, when we acquire vehicles, we typically acquire them and finance them with leases. And so obviously financing costs are very important to the overall monthly lease cost. What was a lease cost in the neighborhood of $800 to $1,000 per month on a 72-month lease pre-COVID, at the time that we ultimately started purchasing vehicles, and oh, by the way, the vehicles could not be purchased because they didn't exist in the marketplace due to supply chain difficulties and chip shortages, which everyone's aware of, and I'm sure you've heard from others as well. We had that similar issue, and quite honestly, when we went to our sourcing agent, what would typically be a 6 to 9 month purchase cycle, manufacture the vehicle and delivery, turned into a 15-month to 18-month cycle. So clearly, in order to service the contract, we had to look to alternative sources. We asked him to research around the country, since they have a national presence, what might be out there, and lo and behold, came up with several vehicles that were set aside for another organization, much larger than us, but many organizations who are nonprofits or others who are purchasing their vehicles with grants, if the vehicles are not delivered in a certain time-specific period, they lose the grant money and have to forfeit the contract and with the manufacturer. So they were able to find initially 3 separate vehicles that were set for delivery to manufacturer and then delivery to somebody else. That organization had to give them up. We were able to step in their shoes. Initially, it was supposed to be a September delivery, but the inevitable pushback due to manufacturing delays, et cetera, pushed them back until October. Once we receive vehicles under this contract, in order to put them in service, we have some special equipment that's installed by our friends at Norwalk Transit, plus just going through the typical process of getting the vehicles ready with the state. take some time, and so the total time period forced us until December to start what we had hoped would be earlier in the year, but until December, we finally put those vehicles in service.
I
Now,
think- I think-
getting back
I
to the
think-
original question,
I think Leslie has a question.
Yeah, just
You-
if I can ask a question,
Sure.
just to get to the bottom line to understand the new contract. You're operating this contract, or you will over a period of time, but that's going to be a break-even operation? Or do you
Yes.
expect that this contract to contribute revenue to cover costs for other services within town?
we have a different style of contract than we had years ago with the state. Years ago, the contract was based on a number of trips that were taken by individuals. We would get a specific reimbursement rate based on the number of individuals that were transported.
this contract?
And so transport more, you receive more revenues. This new contract is based on a fixed amount of hours serviced each day throughout the year. So number of individuals served is no longer going to generate a positive or negative variance relative to the reimbursement rate that we've negotiated with the state. So we can't, if you will, in years back, we would push as much as we can to ensure that the vehicles were populated to the highest level possible and get as much of a reimbursement as possible. Now we have a very specific, if a driver and a vehicle are in operation for 8 hours in a particular day, they're going to get 8 times our hourly service rate.
So when are you, okay?
And just to summarize, when we planned, assuming those service rate reimbursements, as I told you in a previous meeting, we are planning with the expectation that we don't know 100% how this first year would go, but over the 5 years, our expectation was at a minimum, we would have a break-even scenario. Our expectation is that if we put additional vehicles in service earlier than we had previously anticipated, we have the ability to leverage our overhead and therefore improve. and
Is
have
the
a higher-
hours per day per car, or the hours per day
Per vehicle. Per
Per
vehicle.
vehicle? So by adding vehicles, you do increase your capacity to
Absolutely.
perform.
So
Okay.
it's all variable costs at that point
Okay.
forward.
So when I'm going to your financial numbers, I'm going to follow on with this question. When I looked at your fiscal year 2023 cash flow, the forecast versus the plan, I noticed that the Connecticut Paratransit revenues, which it says initial year of 5-year service agreement, was $473,000. However, when I looked at the related expenses, which you then labeled very kindly, so it was easy for me to do, Connecticut Paratransit operations. So I came up with a total there of $516,000. So it looks like, in terms of your 23 cash flow, is it correct that you're, based on these numbers, you're basically forecasting a deficit on this contract of $43,000 on the $473,000 contract?
So what the Connecticut Paratransit operations reference on all of the expense items is, that refers to the variance. It doesn't refer to the total expenses. The total expenses includes all of our operations throughout. But the variance that's being driven
Right.
by the additional costs, so that 273,000 of additional costs, that relates to the 473,000 of paratransit revenues. So net, as well as some of what we had originally planned. So it's higher than planned. We've redeployed some resources, obviously, as food delivery has come down tremendously. So a portion of those redeployed resources, as well as additional drivers and vehicles that we've brought on, but in this case, talking about payroll and benefits, additional drivers that we've brought on, causes the 273,000 variance.
So, but you have the payroll and benefits. I guess I added on all the rest, auto insurance, the vehicle leases, the fuel, et cetera. And that number turned out to be 516,000. And I compared that, those were all your expense operations that were identified as Connecticut paratransit operations. And I compared that with your Connecticut paratransit revenues. And that's how I came up with this $43,000
And
deficit.
in this first year of operations, which I said was going to be a challenging year, one of the things that we knew that would help pull us through this year, we had an extraordinary item, which is the ERTC, which is available employee reimbursement tax credit. Those funds, one-time situations made available for organizations that suffered during COVID. We were eligible for $137,000 reimbursement, and that helped offset what we knew were going to be some of the upfront costs related to this first year of operations.
Thank you.
Sure. Just so
Have
that I
any
can.
other questions?
Just so that I can finish up on the vehicle costs, because I actually didn't get to the punchline because I spoke too long. But the punchline is this: going into COVID, we could purchase a vehicle for $60,000 to $65,000, 12-seater, 2-wheelchair vehicle. That vehicle, once we were finally able to source them, is now $115,000. A $90,000 increase relative to the pre-COVID rate. In addition to that, interest rates on leases, which were in the neighborhood of 5-6%, are now 10 to 12%. So the combination of that took a pre-COVID lease that would be anywhere from $800 to $1,000, depending upon when we purchased the vehicle and the interest rates at that point. That cost on a monthly basis now is $2,000. So just using $1,000 as a baseline, going from $12,000 a year to $24,000 a year for each vehicle that we're bringing on. Oh, wait, there's more. One of the things that we use to help subsidize some of our vehicle purchases is a program in the state which is called 5310 program. That's a program that the federal government allocates funds to states annually. And then the states determine, and it's for ADA-type vehicles to help support folks who require transportation as part of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act mandate. Now, on an annual basis, TAG would be expected, based on our history, to have plus or minus one vehicle supported with these funds, which would typically defray the costs of about 80% of a vehicle cost. So previous to COVID, any particular year, we would have 0, 1, or 2 vehicles, depending upon how much business we were doing, how much new business we were doing, supported with 5310 funds. We had received our most recent vehicle with those funds in 2021. We had put in an application for another vehicle, which was expected to be delivered in 2022. The program was suspended. The reason why the program was suspended is because what I just mentioned to you. The vehicle prices went up so large, the state was provided a certain amount of funds. The price of the new vehicles just totally stripped all of that funding. So the program was suspended until they could decide how to fill out all of those orders. What they just in the past few weeks announced, and this is a long time coming, but in the past few weeks just announced, the program for the following year, those funds were pushed over to the previous year to offset the additional vehicle costs. So now, the vehicle that we were supposed to receive in '22 will likely come in '24. There will be no program for vehicles in '23. However, there's an operating piece which, now that I've been made aware of this, we have additional business on the dial-a-ride side, which we may be able to place an application in and potentially receive some funds on there. So I'm going to send an application in for that. But for the time being, we have this gap between when we would have expected to receive 80% of the purchase price of a vehicle and when we actually will. And what that does for us, just very simply, on a $115,000 vehicle, 20% of the cost of that vehicle is $23,000. That's what we would have to pay up front. The rest of that cost would be borne by the 5310 program, reimbursement through that program. Instead of that, each vehicle that we don't receive funds on, we're leasing, as I told you, for $2,000 a month. That's $144,000 over a 72-month term. And then at the end of the term, we purchase the residual value in the vehicle for about $6,000. So it's $150,000 all-in cost over 6 years versus $23,000 up front. It's a little bit of a different cost that we're trying to figure out. How do we manage early on in this contract when we knew we were going to have a pretty challenging period as well? Over the term of this contract, we expect most of this to work itself out, but we do have a little bit of a challenge early on. So I just wanted to pass that along as well.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Nisha? No? Leslie? Laura?
Mike, do you do audited financials?
Yes, we do.
And is your year end June 30th?
June 30th, that's
Okay,
correct.
so can you forward those to us when they're available?
We will,
Thank you.
sure.
So, one of the things that you always do is you always give us a great package, and you get it to us in advance. And so, we've had that opportunity to look at that in advance. So we don't seem to have questions, and is that correct?
That is
So,
correct. I'm ready to
guess
make a
what I'm
motion.
looking for?
All right, I can make a motion to approve the release of conditions for the first half of $154,000 for TAG, and to have this be routine.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
As routine. Those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous, 400. And I'm looking over to our chairman. And so it looks like it's going to be on the full BET agenda as routine, Mike. And so I don't think you need to come back tomorrow.
Well, that's great news. Let me know if anything changes.
Okay.
Thank you
And-
so much.
And I'm not sure I properly introduced you. So I greeted you, but you're the chairman of the board and also the treasurer. And so this is Mike Miller of TAG. But I actually have one question that, I guess could ask earlier. In the past, you were looking for directors, board directors. Are you still looking for board directors? It's a nice advertisement here, we're on television.
I appreciate it. We do have a full slate of directors, but given that TAG is growing, we're growing as well. So we certainly would welcome anyone who is interested in helping support an organization grow as our community is growing.
Great, thank you. So they can contact you if they're interested.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Super. So, we are now going to add an item to our agenda. Do I have a motion to add an item to our agenda for the Board of Education?
Yes, I'll make a motion to add ED8, which is a carryover, capital carry forward project for the generator replacement.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Leslie Moriarty and seconded by Nisha Arora to add an agenda item. Those in favor? Okay, so that's unanimous, which is much greater than our 2/3 required vote. So with us, we have Blaise Levitin, who's walking to our table, and he's here as the Chief Operating Officer of our Greenwich Public Schools to present this item to us today. So thank you for joining us today, Blaise, and ticking through. I think, just to give a little background, we were going through some of our agenda items last week, early part of last week, maybe, to begin with, early midweek. And so in our review, Roland, we've been talking, and I asked him to review any departments that had any of our capital carry forwards that had not been addressed. And so I think Roland contacted you about 3 that we had in fiscal year '23. And you had come back, well, there was communications in between, but this afternoon you came back with one in particular, and that's the one we're going to hear this afternoon. So this is not posted as such, but it's a capital carry forward for a generator replacement for $129,000. So now maybe you could tell us a bit more.
Sure, yeah. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. And thank you, Leslie and Roland, for the help, both on this item and the report, and then also to Shira, who is probably listening, and thank you to you, Shira, too, as well. Appreciate picking up the item. I was not sure on the 3 based on bidding as well as, the contracting development, if we were going to, get it. The other 2, we will. This one, I'm not sure about, so we're here for capital carry forward just in case. This is a $129,000 capital appropriation for a generator at North Miami School. They currently, this is actually to expand the capacity there. One of the reasons too that this has been taking a little bit longer is we are actually repurposing a generator that we already have somewhere else that's almost brand new. I don't exactly recall where, but I do know that it's getting repurposed, so we don't have to purchase a new one, and it will be installed at North Miamis, controlling lighting and a number of essential functions. It won't be like a full emergency shelter capacity generator. It'll be just a small generator to keep the emergency lighting and the essential functions powered. The goal, they're going to be doing this summer. We're trying to get the bid out. When we were repurposing with the existing equipment, we were hoping to just use an on-call service agreement contractor up to $35,000. But it's likely going to be more than that, so we're going to bid it out for an electrician to do this specific job, and that's what the carryover is for.
Thank you. So do we have any questions? Nisha?
So the 129 relays is just for the labor piece of it, because you're saying the cost, which is fine. And does the school currently have a generator? So are you having to rewire, or are you just, because a lot of it is the wiring of, putting the creating a separate electric panel for the generator, right? And
I believe they do not, and so this will be primarily, the bulk of it will be labor and all the wiring, and then there will be some material, but most of the request will be for labor. And I do anticipate, based on the conversation with the team yesterday, that it hopefully will be less than what we were originally thinking, because we're repurposing this equipment.
And where is it coming from?
I'll have to email you. I can't remember where it is off the top of my head, where this equipment's being repurposed from.
Okay, might just make sense to get a new one, because a lot of the taking an old one out, decommissioning it, or putting it offline, putting a new one in.
This would be a new piece of equipment, correct?
It's
just that we had it under a
It's
different
like
scope?
borderline brand new, yeah.
It is a new piece of it?
It's almost brand, it's like less than 2 years old.
Oh, okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, it's like less than 2 years that we're gonna repurpose. I feel like it's Central Middle School,
Would make sense.
but I don't wanna speak factually without follow up
Okay,
with
so
an
it's sitting
email.
somewhere that's not really being utilized, so you're
Yes,
moving it.
that will make a lot more sense to be at North Miamis,
Okay,
yeah.
right.
And I'll follow up though with an email today to confirm that.
And the other 2 items, they're going to contract before
They
the
will
end
be
of the month?
contracted before, yeah. One of them is the ADA program will definitely be, that's well underway. That's the primarily at Western Middle School.
That was a very large one of
That's the large one, yes.
4.3 almost.
Yep. And a portion of that is the 1.1 million for the Julian Curtis. And then the rest of that work, I believe, is the Western Middle School project, the facility upgrades, which we have Silver Petroselli won the award for doing the design, the architectural design for the ADA recommendations at the school, which are just about to get underway.
Great.
The design is.
And then the third one was a renovation, stage renovation or something like that?
Stage renovation, and I
But you're gonna
spoke
start
with our art program director, which I think you know well from your other hat, Laura Newell, and she's helping lead that effort. That will be fully encumbered probably in the next 2 weeks.
Great, thank you. So we have any other questions on this one? Captain?
No?
Laura?
I just have a procedural question because I'm totally blanking. I know Leslie motioned and Nisha seconded, but did we vote to add it to the agenda officially?
Yes,
Did we? Okay,
yes, we
thank
did
you.
initially.
I
We
don't
did
remember
before.
raising my hand.
No, you did, you had it, because I looked, over, no, you voted.
Okay.
It was unanimous, 400.
Okay, good.
And I wrote it down, but then we haven't, okay, so
So
we
I'll
have a
make a
motion?
motion? Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the capital carry-forward request of the Board of Ed for a generator replacement of $129,000 and as routine.
Routine.
I'll second.
Okay, let me just write this down because I have to write a little bit more. This is ED8 since it's not on my agenda. Okay, those in favor? And so that vote 400 is unanimous, and this is routine. And I'm looking over to our chair because, routine. So it's routine, so you don't need to come tomorrow. And
Thank
so
you.
we're all set. Thank you very much. And thank you for your follow-up and checking on the other ones
Yep,
and
I'll follow
getting
up
everything
with
in
the
order.
location it's coming from and confirming the work this afternoon. And while I have the mic, I will also, and have the attention of the BET, I will also give a shout out to the town finance department. As usual, I know I sent an email to the two chairs, but we work very closely together. We've been working on a number of items and initiatives between the two entities, and just a special shout out to the town finance staff because I really value the partnership we've had, and they're really helping out a lot with a number of initiatives over at the Board of Ed, and couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you.
Well, I also think, Blaze, it's helped that you came from the town side and are familiar with our systems and what's needed in the town's process. And so it's a nice blend of the two organizations. So thank you for, your help and obviously, we all appreciate it. We also appreciate when Board of Education people come and visit us in Town Hall, right, Roland and Pete? They really appreciate that. So thank you, Blaze.
All right, well, I'll come on by more often. All right, thank you.
And you might say hint, hint. Anyway, so thank you very much. So next on our agenda,
Before we move on, I just want to make sure that our note taker makes sure to reference the comments of Blaze in the minutes.
Need me to say them again, I'll no problem doing it. See you later.
thanks, Blaze.
Thank you.
Did I say, when I greeted him, did I say Blaze Leviton then too? It's like, I said with Mike, in the last one, and these are very familiar people, and then I thought, oh my goodness, am I telling the public who we're dealing with? So Roland, we're very early in the month on June 6th. Do we have any update on economic conditions on any part of it? Do we have any idea how things are going? I heard did I hear there's a large residential building permit and that's helped our numbers? No? You haven't heard anything yet? So we just don't have any idea on anything yet? I'm sorry? Interest is good. Well, that's good. Pete, any comments on the economic condition? You look like you're ready to tell us something.
It's trending the same as for the first 10 months. One thing we're hoping for is to get the tax billing revenues applied, invested as quick as possible. If you recall, last year we got, I think it was 50-something million, I can't remember, it was 53 or whatever. And we're working with Heather, so we're hoping we get that in as quick as possible so we could put it to work. But you mentioned, was there a large building permit?
I heard there was a large one for, I mean, I didn't hear it. Jeff and I heard it when we met last Friday with our regular monthly assessors meeting, that there was a $20 million building permit pulled for a residential, which is high because they don't include things like fees and profit and so forth on that when you're done by like commercial. So that's pretty for a residential.
Well, hopefully that shows up in the June revenues. So,
Right, Jeff? Am I telling you anything this, I mean, I think you'll see that, all this in her monthly report.
$13 per thousand.
And so this is good. Anyway, that's good. Thank you very much, and thank you for the additional information. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you look like you had something to say. Okay, so question is, do we have any minutes to approve? April, maybe? No, we don't have April. May.
I think we should.
Why wasn't,
I don't know why May isn't on here, but we
I
should
don't know
approve
either,
May.
because Roland and I both approved an agenda with May, and so somehow it got dropped.
Why don't we, for consistency,
So
have
can we
Leslie?
add?
Yeah, let's have Leslie and Nisha make.
So I'll make a motion to add the approval of the May, remind me of the date?
May 9th.
Budget Committee meeting.
Okay, so
Second.
moved by Leslie, seconded by Nisha. Those in favor? Okay. 400
That's to add it to the agenda.
to add that to the agenda, correct. So is there any motion to approve the,
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 9th, 2023, Budget Committee.
Second.
by Leslie, seconded by Nisha? Those in favor? Aye. Okay, you
Can I-
said, April, you want to defer?
The May minutes, the version we're approving are the ones that included some revisions.
I'm totally confused. The May ones that we approved included the comments that you submitted, correct?
That I submitted this morning.
Correct.
So I
Those
just want to make
included,
that
they,
clear to
I
everyone
sent
on the
those out
committee.
to everyone on the, I can't remember if it was just to the Budget Committee meeting afterwards, or whether it was the Budget Committee and Shira, but sometimes it's better not to send it to Shira until we get it all done. I think it was just to the Budget Committee. You see my email?
I mean, I think we only
Are
got
these-
them yesterday, so
Yeah, we approved.
right. So the minutes that we're approving were the ones distributed yesterday and modified by me this morning. And I think that, I just want to make sure that the other Budget Committee members are aware of the changes.
And I sent them to everyone. I sent them, you saw the changes?
Yes.
Good.
And Nisha?
I saw them.
Nisha, okay. So that's settled. Do we have any others? No. What about February? Day 4?
Yes, can make a motion to approve the February 9th, 2023, Day 4 meeting from our fiscal '24 budget review.
Okay, moved by Leslie, seconded by anyone? Second. Nisha? Those in favor?
And those are the minutes as they appear in our packet. So
400. Okay, and April, you asked me this morning to send them to you, and I'm not sure when you asked me. It might have been
think I
like
sent about
12 a.m. or 2 a.m. or something like that.
I think it was 2:30 a.m.
2:30 a.m. She asked me to send them, and I sent them this morning after I got out, or later in the morning. So we'll wait until next month or our next meeting on those, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so do I have a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make that motion to go in executive session at 2:22.
I'll second.
Moved by Ms. Moriarty, second by Ms. Aurora, to go into executive session to discuss Kennard versus the town of Greenwich.
And is it fair to say that there'll be no business conducted after the executive
That's correct.
session?
We'll just do a motion to adjourn, and that's why we waited until the end here.
Correct, but I'm just for the recording and for the audience that this really is, but this is the end
But
of our public action.
this will be the end of our public meeting. We won't be talking about anything of any importance other than that our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, July 11th. It's scheduled at 9:30.
Make it 1 if you want.
What, I'm sorry?
You can make it 1 if you want.
Well, it's scheduled at 9:30, but I'm not going to schedule to 1 until I can confirm that we can get the room. So we may move this back to our normal time. It turns out that the important golf tournament had its date moved. And our champion is going to have to wait until later in the month in order to.
No. That's how rumors get started.
So I have just
Whoa, wait.
number
Oh.
here to call. We didn't know what time to
shut
tell
your
them to call in.
So we're going to,
waiting.
so I just want to make it clear to the public, we're not going to do any more business when we come out. We just, we will adjourn our meeting. Thank you.